Hi, my name is Leslie Pelon and I teach history here at Porterville College. Every student who walks into my classroom, whatever their skills or viewpoints or ideas, I want to bring them into history. I don't want to force them to change themselves to engage with the topic that we're discussing. I am from Porterville. I grew up here and went to PHS, and then I went off to Utah where I studied history, and then did some bumping around supporting my husband's education before coming back to Porterville, and then getting my master's in history from Southern New Hampshire University. And then I worked as a substitute teacher at Porterville High School before starting here in 2019. My parents are Dr. Jeff and Elizabeth Keel. So here on campus, my dad teaches political science and my mom teaches in the psych tech program. I fell in love with teaching actually probably partly because it was the family business, but I think the catalyst was in junior high. I had a teacher at Bartlett, and then I had Mr. Jay Hargis, who actually used to be a teacher here at Porterville College, as my history teachers. And I fell in love with history, and so history and education, they kind of go hand in hand. And then beyond that, I always say I went into teaching because I'm a failed actor, and I get to perform and, you know, entertain by telling stories and helping students learn. And so for me, teaching is getting to be on my own personal stage and writing my own script on a daily basis. History is all about stories, and it's about people. And I like to say I'm gossipy and petty, but that's not a great thing to be in your regular life. But as a historian, I can be gossipy and petty and no one cares because everyone I talk about is dead. But it really, for me, honestly, and to really get deep to it, it's that history is about people. And for me, they're very real, even if they're not here with us anymore, and getting to know new people and meeting new people from the past and learning about them and studying them is just something that's infinitely fascinating to me. And how, as different as people in the past are from us, they are also very much the same. And that's reassuring in a way, that even long after I'm gone, people will be having the same questions and issues, and that's just, I love it. It makes me happy. One of my favorite challenges is when a new student walks into my classroom and says, "Ugh, I hate history, I'm just taking this." And then when I'm, getting a story or telling their story and they see themselves in our history. And that's one of the reasons, like, the approach I take to history is very much like, let's make sure every single one of our students see themselves. And so I pull sources from all over the place and trying to allow them to see. Like this week, some of my students, we read the experience of a transgender woman in Reconstruction, Louisiana. And I feel like for a lot of our students, that's something that's very, speaks to them. Like, they see themselves, we've always been a part of this story. The other thing I really like to do is I have my students do an extra credit project where they contribute to my own time capsule, and they create a primary source, and they either write their own experience or they go interview somebody else in the community about their experience with a historical event. I have a lot of people who've documented their COVID experience, what it was like for them when lockdown happened. I've had people interview their family members who were in Vietnam, or September 11th experiences, all of these things, and then I'm storing them in my time capsule. So 20 years from now, I can use those sources with future students so they can see, like, these are all sources from your community experiencing these events. Over Christmas break, I was able to go to Philadelphia to the annual conference of the American Historical Association. It was phenomenal. I got to attend a lot of different classes on historical methods and what kind of sources are out there. And I intentionally chose a lot of lectures that were on teaching and how to teach, and utilizing primary sources, and making connections with other educators across the country who were dealing with similar struggles. I was introduced to a couple of different things that I've already put in place in my classroom. One in particular is the Perusal app, where my students now, instead of doing a reading quiz, they collaboratively are all looking at the same copy of a reading on their computer screen and annotating collaboratively together. So they can highlight and say, hey, I don't understand what this word, like what this is happening here, can anyone explain? And one of their classmates can comment back. And so they're expected to do a certain number of annotations. And it's the second week of school, and I'm already seeing a massively increased engagement. So I learned about Perusal. The other thing I learned about, and probably my favorite class, was a class about teaching using monsters. And it was these professors who've restructured their history classes to focus on teaching using monsters as the primary sources, with the idea of, to understand a people, understand what they fear. And so instead of teaching a class that's just the history of Japan, it's the history of Japanese monsters. And so this educator was like, yeah, I'm teaching all the same things, it's just now I'm using primary sources that are monsters. And in order to understand why this monster is scary, you have to understand Taoism and Shintoism and all these things. And I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about the next time I teach world history. I think I might be taking that approach. So that was very exciting. The other big thing that was exciting for me was reconnecting with an old professor from when I was an undergrad. I had a moment in my undergrad experience where I was really struggling. My history professors were all telling me that I belonged in the English department because I wrote and I analyzed words like I was an English major, and the English department was telling me that I needed to just stick with history because I wasn't willing to ask the questions and look at things from their perspective. I wanted to know the historical context for everything, and so I felt like I didn't belong. I majored in history, minored in English, and both departments were telling me I didn't belong, and that was really, really hard. And so I walked into Dr. Carey's office hours for a meeting with him about a paper I was doing, and was talking to him about reading Chaucer in this history class, and he was like, wow, you can read this you have really great insights. And I just burst into tears and kind of told him what was going on, and he helped me connect my literary enjoyment with my historical scholarship, and kept me in the major. And so I was sitting at this meeting, and I look up in front of me, and 2 rows ahead of me, there was Dr. Carey. And I got to see him and say hi to him and talk with him, and we took a picture, and it was just really wonderful to make that connection with somebody who had such a huge impact. I don't know if I'd have been able to push through and continue had he not helped me make that connection. I am a huge fantasy novel reader, especially like romance fantasy. And I'm really into dark academia right now. So Discovery of Witches, Leah Bordeaux's Ninth House, Shadow and Bone series. So I really love fantasy novels, and that's honestly usually if I've got something going, if I've got headphones in, I'm not listening to music, I'm listening to a book. And it's usually historical fiction or some sort of romantic fantasy novel.